Alright, welcome to hour 3 of Let's Make a Game. I'll start with a quick recap of how the last two sessions went. In the first session, I built a very simple prototype after outlining what I intended to build for this month, a simple light toggling game. And for session 2, I added some end caps with the title and credit screen, fixed a couple small bugs from the prototype, and added support for a number of different special piece types, which change the default behavior about how the pieces are toggled whenever they're interacted with by the player. I've taken notes along the way as I'm trying to use this as an opportunity to learn more about game development itself, but more than the technical part, trying to use it as an opportunity to learn about the organizational and scoping and time budgeting aspects. So in this third hour, I have a few items on my list that I've already put here from previous sessions. What were the next steps I intended to build, which include support for saving the levels that I edit in the prototype that I currently have, being able to load those levels, and on top of that, being able to add a simple level selection for actual play. So the first step that I'm going to need here is adding the ability to save, and I'm going to just going to show again what the current state of this basic prototype and what this level save is going to be needed to be added to. I'm just going to start up this prototype game and show how it behaves right now and at what point I want to add this ability to save levels. So right now, this functionality that's in place allows us to interact as the player would in the actual game, but I also have added this editing mode that I can use right here where I can actually make content for a specific level. And essentially, what I would like to do here is have the ability to create a level and then to save that as one of the levels the player will play through. Since the editor is a mode of the actual game in Unity's play mode, I need to find a way of saving the level data from this runtime in a way that I can then put into the final game. And I'm not actually sure how to go about doing that, so that's something I'm going to need to research. And a quick search for Unity level editor save came up with this this question, which seems to be looking for exactly the same thing on the Unity's forum. So I'm going to take a quick look at this, and I'll put a link in the notes for this episode to this post, and I'll try to keep up with notes or note links for any other relevant things that I look up in future sessions. So right now I'm just going to read this, and this is what a lot of the time I spend doing these projects ends up being, is a lot of research and a lot of just looking around to see how other people are solving the same things that I'm trying to solve, because it's pretty rare to try and do something that nobody has done before. So what I found from this seems to be that there's not really anything particularly special about adding something like this. It really is just doing straightforward file writing with the .NET API. There's not something particular about Unity in here. And I think that's kind of in line with what I should have expected. I wasn't really sure if there was something in particular of support for this sort of thing, and maybe there is, but it's not something I'm finding. So rather than expect to find any of that, I'll continue to probably expect that that's how I'll go about it. A little bit of a wrench is that a lot of times when doing research on Unity, what you end up finding are examples and answers that people have given using the JavaScript-esque language that they don't seem to be promoting much anymore, but did earlier on. It's the alternative other than C# that you can use with Unity. So if you do find examples and answers that use that, then you have the extra task of translating that to C#. Maybe you actually use this yourself for your games. If you do, that's fine. For me, it's a lot of translation from those, and thankfully, almost all of the examples that I do find these days are C#, so I can use them pretty directly. But while reading this, I did have the thought that there may be support in Unity itself for what I want if I look in the right place. So I am going to try to look for something a little more specific. And that is, I'm going to see if there's a way to take an object and create a prefab file out of that, and that might be something that I could do at runtime through some API of Unity itself to create prefabs as levels that I could load. So if I can find something like that, that might be a way that I could go about creating this, but I'm not sure if it will work. So that's just what I'm going to look into right now. I don't think that was exactly the right route to look down. I think it was close. Prefabs are built themselves on top of serializing objects in Unity, so I think maybe if I look for something more specific along those lines, I might find what I was looking for a little closer. Let's see about specifically about serializing objects to files, and that might be a more specific example of what I'm actually trying to look into. So looking at the first research I did looking for information about saving levels was very specific, and I guess I'm actually looking a little more broad here about not why I'm trying to do it, but how I expect it to work. What I really am doing is trying to serialize data in Unity, which is a more general problem to solve than specifically saving levels. So that search, I think, will bear a little better fruit because it might find more examples and have a greater breadth of people who have done similar things. So serialization to files is not something I've done directly in Unity, at least through their own serialization framework. It is something that I've interacted with a little bit in terms of how it interfaces with the editor customizations. So I'm a little familiar with some of the pieces of this, and I think that I'll be able to build on that experience a little bit. So at some point, I'm going to be adding some interfaces for actually doing the saving, but for the moment, while I'm just testing out how this works, I'm just going to do a debug log of the serialization as a way of just seeing that I actually get that aspect of it working, and then I'll start putting it into a file. So in the tradition of one step at a time, the first thing I'm going to do is every time I toggle or change the board, I'll go ahead and reserialize it and just see what that format looks like before I go about figuring out how to put it in a file. And because the serialization itself will be essentially through a class or a struct that only represents the serialized data. This is not a class or object that is intended to have behavior, but just data only. While there is this grid controller class that I've already created, I'm going to create a separate class just for the grid data, which will only be used for the serialization step. This does mean that at serialization time I'll need to construct this object before I go ahead and actually do the serialization, but that should be relatively straightforward. And now, assuming this actually compiles, I'm going to go ahead and try this out and see how close it is to what I'm trying to do. But of course I forgot to actually invoke this at some point, which, as I said, I wanted to do after the toggling. Now, this is actually intended to be after the interaction of the toggling, because this utility is used for toggling individual ones, which happen multiple times for every interaction. So while this is a grid method, I'm going to interact with it from here. Actually, since the grid is checked for completeness at the end of every interaction, that's a place that, for now, just while this is sort of experimental, I'll go ahead and kick off this serialization every time that's invoked, just so that I edit it a little closer to what's actually being used. Great, and this looks pretty close to what I was expecting, although the actual numbers I'm seeing are not really. They're a bit of a surprise, because with the entire board in a single state here, I would expect to see all ones or zeros and not mixes like this. So that's a little surprising, and I'm not sure why I see that. And likewise, I think that the issue here is one of timing. At this point, I am a little perplexed by the behavior. So this seems nearly correct. And this is just hmm. Well, this would be a little harder or a little easier to track down and see exactly what's going on if I could actually just inspect at any point what this internal state was. And this does often make me wish that Unity allowed for some way of having code protection, like private settable fields that could, as an exception, be inspectable and changeable by the inspector. So instead, I will just switch this to a simple public boolean rather than a private setter, and now I'll be able to make sure that all of these are reflecting the state that I expect that they should be, because right now it does seem to be a bit off. So the first thing I want to check is the initial state. They all seem to say that they're on. All of them are the same value, which is good. And if I toggle here and check this out, all the ones that I have now turned black are in fact off. Which means that there should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there are about 10 times too many off values here. And here I expect all of them to be on. I do not see that. As a matter of fact, I only see a single difference even though I've toggled multiple. I'm going to see how this behaves with other types now. So this also toggles 5, but toggles a different 5. And this is still only toggling 1 or 2 values in the state. So what this is probably going to mean is that I'm incorrectly doing this calculation, and most likely I'm converting the coordinates to an index in a way that is generating duplicate indexes, and I'm reading some incorrect subset with duplicates of the coordinates. So I'm going to redo that and see if I can fix it. My logic I was thinking of is just definitely off base and should be a simple correction. This looks more correct. Alright, that is definitely better, and now that I can see the serialization makes total sense, I can look at saving that to a file and putting this in place. Of course, before I actually do the file saving, I'm going to want some sort of interface for doing this. So that's going to probably come first. That's going to come right now. And I'm going to create this in a new UI panel because I want to sort of contain these editor features so that I'll be able to easily toggle them off in the build mode later. And I don't know. Okay. In the wrong menu there, so I couldn't find the panel. Give this a little bit of layout control just so that I don't have to deal with layout as much. And add a few things. So of course there's going to be actually two buttons, a save button and a load button. And for controlling what is getting saved or loaded in terms of which level. Simple input field. That will be the level number that we're going to be working with. And right away I can see that definitely made this a little tighter. Go ahead and make sure that the input is set to be an integer. Label all the buttons. And of course the actual behavior of loading these levels is going to come back to the ever helpful and always growing responsibilities of the game manager class. And as part of this, I'm going to move the actual grid data class out of the grid controller and into the game manager, as it is the area responsible for actual saving and loading. It's going to be includes moving this serialize method out, which will grow a little bit soon. I no longer need to repeatedly call that as part of testing, so we remove that call. Made a simple change here. It's not super often that I do even just basic file operations in Unity or C#, because C# is not my day-to-day language, and most of my Unity work is not involved file manipulation. So I will be looking up at least a reference or example of doing this. I don't think this looks like exactly what I want. Go. Just need a little example to remind myself the specifics of the API. Alright, I'm going to bind this save button to that. Now, right now, this is expecting a level parameter, but I actually don't expect it to get passed in, but just to read from that input. So for now, I'm going to hard code that just for testing purposes. Go ahead and hook that save button up. Alright, and I'm going to check out that this actually compiles and see what happens when the save button is pressed. Make a very simple, by the simplest level. and try this. And now here, back in my command line, I expect, obviously, the file was created. I don't want it in the root here, so clearly I'm going to want to put this somewhere else. And I also know from some experience that if I want to read text or data files at runtime with Unity, that those need to be part of the resources folder in assets. Resources folder being used for assets that are loaded at runtime that are not built as part of the initial loaded binary package for Unity for your built game. So that's also going to be a place where we'll put levels. So I'm going to go ahead and create a specific place for those in assets/resources/levels, and then make a pretty quick and simple adjustment here. Assets/resources/levels, changing the path that we save our levels to place them in there. And now, if we let Unity recompile our scripts, which you can do at runtime, and assuming that that didn't break, which sometimes it does, should be able to. That did not work. Go ahead and restart this and try the save again, and just make sure it puts them in the right place. And if this does what I think it should do, I think it'll give a good starting point. So now our save will show us that that our level data is right there, ready for us to include in the game, to commit into our Git repository, to load at runtime as a resources asset. And that is definitely the foundation we need for this level saving. And the next step, of course, is going to be able to save different levels. So that's going to be coming up next. So the game manager wants to know the current user, or actually level editor entered level number. So when it's doing that save, it's able to know which level to save to, and this will also be used to control which one is loaded when using the load function that we'll build next. And so in order to make that work, we're going to give the game manager a reference to this input that we've created as part of the level editing panel. This doesn't seem to come up at all, though. Might be that's just not an inspectable object as a field, so there we go. So we only need a reference to the text aspect of the input. That's where the actual value is stored anyway. And now in our save level data method, instead of just one, go ahead and parse text entered number here Yeah. As long as we're going to be parsing that, we want to make sure that it always has some valid value. We already configured that to be a integer number. So we're just going to go ahead and add a default value and start it as 1. What we really want to test here is that now if we made a level 2, that we can use this interface to save that without overriding level 1. And this worked. That's fantastic. Great. So we're going to go ahead back to the notes here, and we're going to update our notes and our goal checklist for this hour. So we search level editing and saving. We searched serializing prefabs to files as one of the options for how to save level data. And we ended up going with JSON object serialization to a file ourselves, which is a perfectly fine solution and ended up being simpler than probably the more complex aspects of Unity that we were thinking of utilizing for this. So we now have level saving completed, and with that, I'm not going to actually add the resources or anything in them just yet, but we will be adding level data as it's created in the future. So right now we're just going to make a commit for the point at which we've implemented level saving for the editor. And at this point, I'm not sure that all these goals are going to get completed, but I'll look to rearrange tasks only at the end as time actually runs out. The first 2 sessions had a lot more done than were anticipated or planned, so I think it's fine if this particular step took a little more time than anticipated, and that is no problem at all. But still, with 13 minutes left in this hour, I'm going to get straight on to trying to get at least the second part done, which is level loading. So this should work pretty similar to the way saving did. It should load based on the number entered in this input here. So we'll essentially implement the opposite of the save. And I don't actually know what the API is for the reverse of this JSON serialization, but I can guess it's going to be through the same object. And I can also begin with reading in the same fashion that we created our file. now we simply have a reverse of this serialization, or, well, this isn't so much a serialization as a packing that we did, and so now we'll unpack that data back into the grid controller itself. And I realize at this point that it probably does make sense to leave this on flag as public, so that the level loading can use that to inject the current state into those cells. Alright, so we're going to try this out and see if we can load our current two levels with these. So first we'll try our level 1 and our level 2. We're going to see that neither of them actually worked, which was an unexpected result. And that is a great point to realize that new method was never actually hooked up to any buttons, so should not expected that to work. So we'll bring that up and try it again. And now I can see through this input inspector right here that the correct cells are actually turned on and off, but we're not controlling whether or not they're what their presentation is based on that. So that actually means that my suggestion to keep this flag publicly settable wasn't as well thought out. And we do want to keep a private setter for this flag. The reason that we want to keep that is that we need to provide a method to set whether or not it's currently on, and we can use that as part of the level loading to both set in the internal state and the graphics. And I think we can actually make this utilize methods that we already have, and to do that we'll see if the new value is different than what we already have. Then we will simply toggle ourselves, which will result in the new correct state and handle the color and UI changes exactly as if it was interacted with. We'll try this out. We weren't calling that new method from here, so we'll do so now. Great, everything is working fantastic. So that's another opportunity for level loading. editor. However, while wrapping up that, I did recall there is a step that we missed, which is support for cell types in saving and loading. We are saving and loading the state of which blocks are on or off, but not which types they are for the specialty block types. So that's something we're going to add before moving on to any kind of level selection or really calling these two features that we have right now complete. And we're going to do this with a second array, in this case one that stores the type. And I think that always going to make sense to invoke the set method with both the on-off state and the type. So we're going to add that as a second parameter. And in adding that second parameter, we'll add it to the call first and then correct the implementation to match. Okay, so we're going to see if this works to add support for those saved levels, including not just the on-off state of all the 25 spaces, but also whether or not they were one of our particular special types. So when it just loads up, this loads up, we're going to load up level 2, and then we're going to create a few special spaces. We are going to call that level 3. We'll go ahead and use those as well to create our level. Then we'll go back to level 1, 2, and 3. And we see that these have been restored and the behavior for them as well matches. And we have both loaded and then completed our level that was saved, and can call adding support for types complete as we thought saving and loading was in the first place. At this point, there is a minute and 50 seconds left on my clock for the hour, and I didn't get to everything that was itemized in the goals for this hour. This is only the third of 25 hours planned for development in this game. Both the previous hours had more done than I expected, and I think that the actual level selection will go pretty quick, so I'm not really feeling bad about not having finished it within this hour. So I will move that as the top goal for the next session, session 4. I will add to my notes that we implemented level saving and loading and added support for cell types, which we added at the end. And I know that just adding the level selection and the next stage will be pretty quick, so I can expect to add something more to that. But I'm not really sure what's going to go in that session. I do think that it's going to end up being a bit of an art focus. I have a lot of placeholder art right now, and after getting the level selection in place, there's gonna be a pretty good rounded prototype, and it'll be good to take a step back and look at what the whole picture is going to look like. So I'm not really sure specific art asset goals that need to be put in there. I think that or hour 4 is probably just going to be me sitting down and doing lots of sketches for an hour about styles, themes, and layouts that I expect to be in the final product. So I hope somebody's looking forward to that, and I'll see you next time.